Canadian Airlines are taking away flights to popular U.S. cities. This after many Canadian vacationers apparently are avoiding the U.S. entirely.
I just don't really want to support them right now. If they're going to do that to us, I don't want to give any money to them.
Data shared by Flight Centre Canada shows Canadians are choosing other international destinations. From May to July, Buenos Aires, Osaka, Copenhagen, and Curacao saw a more than 100% increase in travel spending by Canadians compared to last year.
A pair of German tourists is making headlines for being deported after failing to book hotels prior to arriving to the islands.
Sources say those German teens were sent for several days to a detention facility, the latest case of Hawaii's immigration crackdown under the Trump administration.
A French scientist was denied entry into the United States because of his opinions about the Trump administration.
Jasmine Mooney is a Canadian citizen who had a work visa, no criminal record, and had been traveling back and forth between Canada and California without any complications until she says she was suddenly detained without explanation at the San Diego border when she tried to reapply for a new visa.
Spirit Airlines filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2025, for the second time in less than a year. The carrier that built its business on cheap Florida flights and Latin American connections exited 12 cities, suspended 40 routes, a quarter of its entire network, and planned furloughs for a third of its flight attendants. Not because fuel costs spiked, not because a pandemic shut borders, because the passengers simply stopped showing up. Meanwhile, 1,500 miles south, Brazil welcomed its 4 millionth international tourist of the year in May, a surge of over 50%, while Mexican resorts in Cancun couldn't build hotels fast enough to accommodate the nearly 1.7 million Canadians who used to vacation in the United States, but now spend their money margarita-side in the Riviera Maya instead. The numbers reveal something almost mathematically elegant in its cruelty. The United States hemorrhaged over $12 billion in tourism revenue during 2025. Simultaneously, Latin America's tourism market hit $110 billion, with Brazil alone pulling in over $6 billion in the first 4 months. This wasn't market expansion where everyone wins. This was pure substitution. Tourists who would have visited New York visiting Rio instead. Families who planned Disney trips choosing Mexican cenotes, Europeans booking Bogota instead of Miami. The World Travel and Tourism Council identified America as the only country out of 184 global economies experiencing declining tourism revenue in 2025. The only one. Every war zone, every pandemic hotspot, every economically struggling nation on Earth gained tourists, except the country with Disneyland, the Grand Canyon, and the Statue of Liberty. Trump's policies manufactured this redistribution with remarkable efficiency. February 1st, he imposed 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico. March tourism plummeted 10 to 14%, the steepest monthly decline of the year. April 2nd, designated Liberation Day, brought sweeping reciprocal tariffs affecting 50 countries. Canadian car travel to the U.S. collapsed over 30% year over year that month. June 4th delivered Presidential Proclamation 10,949, a 19-country travel ban affecting over 400 million people. July 4th, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act established a $250 visa integrity fee, a cost increase of over 140%, and slashed Brand USA marketing funding by 80%. Each policy triggered immediate booking cancellations, which booking platforms tracked in real time as travelers redirected to Latin American alternatives. The detention cases amplified policy effects through viral fear. German teenagers Charlotte Pohl and Maria Lepere deported from Hawaii despite proper ESTA authorization. A French scientist denied entry to a Houston research conference after border officials found Trump-critical messages on his phone. Canadian actress Jasmine Mooney spending 12 days in ICE detention at San Ysidro. These individual incidents generated international headlines that influenced millions of travel decisions. Germany, UK, France, Ireland, Denmark, Netherlands, and Finland issued official travel advisories warning citizens about U.S. entry procedures. When governments tell their citizens, your country might detain them for their social media posts, Tourism collapses aren't mysterious. They're inevitable. Joe Conan's Seattle free walking tours saw customer volume drop 30% in 2025. He hasn't paid himself all year, using personal savings to keep his 15 tour guides employed. "I haven't seen a single Toronto Blue Jays baseball hat all summer," he said, noting the May Blue Jays Mariners series that usually brings thousands of Canadian baseball fans produced almost no business. Seattle expects to lose over a quarter of international visitors. John Brink, another Seattle tour operator, reported that Canadians calling to cancel explicitly told me that it was because of the policies and the behavior of our current president. These aren't corporations with diversified revenue streams. These are small business owners watching their life's work evaporate because people 150 miles north decided America wasn't worth visiting anymore. Las Vegas casinos began the layoffs in waves. MGM Resorts eliminated concierge services at 6 Strip properties. Fontainebleau laid off dozens of table game dealers in May. Treasure Island announced its second round of cuts in August. Workers who weren't formally terminated found themselves on indefinite call without shifts. Sonia Owens, a Caesars employee, hasn't worked once in 2 months despite being available. Hotel occupancy fell from nearly 84% to just over 76%. Gaming revenue on the Strip dropped nearly 5%. Nevada's unemployment hit over 5%, highest among all states, with Las Vegas Metro reaching nearly 6%, the highest unemployment rate of any major metro area over 1 million population in America. The city that survived recessions and pandemics couldn't survive Canadians deciding Mexico looked better, because Mexico did look better. Canadian visits to Mexico surged nearly 12% in the first half of 2025, nearly 1.7 million Canadians choosing Tulum and Playa del Carmen over Fort Lauderdale and Miami Beach. This wasn't random. Flight Centre Canada, one of the country's largest travel agencies, reported U.S. leisure bookings collapsed 40% in February, while Mexico bookings soared. When your northern neighbor imposes 25% tariffs, calls your prime minister governor, and suggests your country should become the 51st state, you find somewhere else to spend $20 billion annually. Mexico proved conveniently close, visa-free, welcoming, and significantly cheaper than the U.S. even before tariff-induced currency effects. Brazil emerged as the breakout winner with tourism numbers so absurd they require repeating. Nearly 5 million international tourists from January through May, a 50% increase over 2024 and an all-time record. Tourism revenue hit over $6 billion by April, a surge of nearly 60%. Rio de Janeiro alone attracted over 1 million visitors in 5 months, with May showing a jump of over 50% year over year. Argentine arrivals nearly doubled, up almost 97%. Chilean tourists increased over 30%. European arrivals from France, Portugal, Germany, UK, Spain, and Italy combined showed an increase of nearly 90%. Even Americans were fleeing to Brazil. U.S. visitors rose nearly 20% as Americans themselves chose Rio over domestic destinations. The redistribution created a perfect mirror. Canadian land travel to the U.S. fell nearly 30% in March. Mexican tourism from Canadians rose in exact inverse proportion. Western Europe's visits to America dropped 17% in March. Brazil's European arrivals jumped nearly 90% in early 2025. The booking platforms revealed the mechanism in granular detail. Airbnb's CFO stated explicitly that Canadian travelers were visiting the U.S. less, while spending more in Europe, Latin America, and Asia. Expedia's CEO noted, Europeans are choosing to visit Latin America instead, with U.S. inbound bookings falling 7%, while Canadian bookings to America plummeted 30%. The same search that once showed New York hotels now displayed Rio properties. Tourism proved frictionless. Switching destinations required clicking a different link. Paraguay registered over 50% growth. Colombia hit 10% increases, generating nearly $3 billion in foreign currency. Peru secured South America's leading destination for the first time with 7% growth. Chile grew 4% to 6 million visitors while winning awards for adventure tourism, green destinations, and nature tourism. Venezuela recorded 12% growth to 2 million visitors. Ecuador hit 9% increases to nearly 2 million tourists. The entire continent experienced synchronized boom, while America experienced synchronized collapse. The infrastructure investments reveal permanence. Brazil attracted over $80 million in foreign direct investment for tourism in early 2025, with over $60 million flowing to transportation infrastructure. Latin America attracted over 200 tourism investment projects, representing over $20 billion in capital expenditure from 2019 to 2023. LATAM Airlines won South America's leading airline and expanded routes. Aeromexico captured Mexico and Central America's leading airline and added service to Cartagena. New hotels opened across the continent. Sofitel, Marriott, Hilton developing properties to capture demand. These aren't temporary pivots. These are structural realignments built on concrete, steel, and capital that won't evaporate if American policies change. The timeline for U.S. recovery extends impossibly far. Full recovery to pre-pandemic international visitor levels, previously forecast for 2026, was pushed to 2029, a 3-year delay. America's share of global international arrivals dropped from nearly 5% in 2024 to just over 4% in 2025. And Tourism Economics projects that figure will remain at that depressed level through the next decade. Not a temporary dip. A permanent loss of market share as Latin America establishes itself as the hemisphere's ascendant tourism powerhouse, while America becomes the cautionary tale of how nationalist policies produce the exact opposite of their intended effects. Tourism Economics President Adam Sachs identified the mechanism. With each policy development, each rhetorical missive, we're just seeing unforced error after unforced error. The causal chain linking Trump administration decisions to tourism flows has unusual clarity. Tariff announcements in February produced immediate March declines. High-profile detentions in March through May generated sustained booking collapses. The June travel ban and July visa fee compounded existing weakness. No other major economy experienced declining tourism in 2025, isolating the U.S. as uniquely damaged by its own governmental actions. Julia Simpson, World Travel and Tourism Council president, delivered the assessment. The world's biggest travel and tourism economy is heading in the wrong direction. While other nations are rolling out the welcome mat, the U.S. government is putting up the closed sign. That closed sign represented over $12 billion in lost revenue, 230,000 jobs at risk, border communities economically devastated, and a permanent redistribution of tourism flows that Latin America is investing billions to cement into place. What took decades to build was destroyed in months, and what was destroyed in months will take decades to rebuild, if it rebuilds at all. Somewhere in Cancun right now, a Canadian family is checking into a resort they would have booked in Florida if Trump hadn't called their prime minister governor. They're discovering they like Mexican beaches better. The food's superior, the culture's richer, the welcome's genuine. Next year, they'll return to Cancun, bringing friends. In Rio, a German couple is exploring neighborhoods they never would have discovered if Houston hadn't seemed politically unpredictable. They're planning to return for Carnival. In Bogota, an American is on vacation enjoying coffee culture and realizing his own hemisphere has destinations worth exploring beyond U.S. borders. These aren't tourists waiting for American policy to change so they can resume old patterns. These are travelers establishing new patterns, discovering new destinations, creating new memories that will shape decades of future travel decisions. The tourists are gone. The money followed. And Latin America is building the infrastructure to ensure neither ever returns north.